Hello, all you beautiful people out there. As always, we start Saturday live stream with the comment of the week. Today's comment of the week is from Daniel and the Fiery Furnace. And it is from Robert X. And he states, when you first read the story, you think, great, you don't need to bow down for anyone. But then they say they only bow down for their God. So not only didn't they change anything, they also swapped not bowing for a real person who could actually hurt them for one who can't even give you a cold. They are not brave, but stupid. Great video, Lisa. I agree 100% that it was stupid. However, you do have to have some sort of an admiration for people who are willing to stick up for their beliefs. I'm just saying, I agree they're stupid too, but, like I said, admiration, not necessarily respect, but I think you get my drift. Alrighty, today in history, Gandhi is assassinated. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the political and spiritual leader of the Indian independent movement, was assassinated in New Delhi by a Hindu extremist. Born the son of an Indian official in 1869, Gandhi's Vaishnava mother was deeply religious and early on exposed her son to Jainism, a morally rigorous Indian religion that advocated nonviolence. Gandhi was an unremarkable student, but in 1888, given an opportunity to study law in England. In 1891, he returned to India, but failing to find regular legal work, he accepted in 1893 a one-year contract in South Africa. Settling in Natal, he was subjected to racism and South African laws that restricted the rights of Indian laborers. Gandhi later recalled one such incident in which he was removed from a first-class railway compartment and thrown off a train as his moment of truth. From there on, he decided to fight injustice and defend his rights as an Indian and a man. When his contract expired, he spontaneously decided to remain in South Africa and launched a campaign against legislation that would deprive Indians of the right to vote. He formed the Natal Indian Congress and drew international attention to the plight of Indians in South Africa. In 1906, the Transvaal government sought to further restrict the rights of Indians, and Gandhi organized his first campaign of Satyagraha, or mass civil disobedience. After 7 years of protest, he negotiated a compromise agreement with the South African government. In 1914, Gandhi returned to India and lived a life of abstinence and spirituality on the periphery of Indian politics. He supported Britain in the First World War, but in 1919 launched a new Satyagraha in protest of Britain's mandatory military draft of Indians. Hundreds of thousands answered his call to protest, and by 1920 he was leader of the Indian movement for independence. He reorganized the Indian National Congress as a political force and launched a massive boycott of British goods, services, and institutions in India. Then in 1922, he abruptly called off the Satyagraha when violence erupted. 1 month later, he was arrested by the British authorities for sedition, found guilty, and imprisoned. After his release in 1924, he led an extended fast in protest of Hindu-Muslim violence. In 1928, he returned to national politics when he demanded dominion status for India, and in 1930 launched a mass protest against British salt tax, which hurt India's poor. In his most famous campaign of civil disobedience, Gandhi and his followers marched to the Arabian Sea, where they made their own salt by evaporating seawater. The march, which resulted in the arrest of Gandhi and 60,000 others, earned new international respect and support for the leader and his movement. In 1931, Gandhi was released to attend the Round Table Conference on India in London as the sole representative of the Indian National Congress. The meeting was a great disappointment, and after his return to India, he was again imprisoned. While in jail, he led another fast in protest of the British government's treatment of the untouchables, the impoverished and degraded Indians who occupied the lowest tiers of the caste system. In 1934, he left the Indian Congress Party to work for the economic development of India's many poor. His protege, Jawaharlal Nehru, was named leader of the party in his place. With the outbreak of World War II, Gandhi returned to politics and called for Indian cooperation with the British war effort in exchange for independence. Britain refused and sought to divide India by supporting conservative Hindu and Muslim groups. In response, Gandhi launched the Quit India movement in 1942, which called for a total British withdrawal. Gandhi and other nationalist leaders were imprisoned until 1944. In 1945, a new government came to power in Britain, and negotiations for India's independence began. Gandhi saw a unified India, but the Muslim League, which had grown in influence during the war, disagreed. After protracted talks, Britain agreed to create the two new independent states of India and Pakistan on August 15, 1947. Gandhi was greatly distressed by the partition, and bloody violence soon broke out between Hindus and Muslims in India. In an effort to end India's religious strife, he resorted to fasts and visits to the troubled areas. He was on one such vigil in New Delhi when Nathuram Godse, a Hindu extremist who objected to Gandhi's tolerance for the Muslims, fatally shot him. Known as Mahatma, or the greatest soul, during his lifetime, Gandhi's persuasive methods of civil disobedience influenced leaders of civil rights movements around the world, especially our very own Martin Luther King Jr. So that is today in history. Hey, Nevermore. So now we get on to our prime topic of making fun of the Bible. And today it is Exodus 1 through 5. Sorry. Alrighty. So, Exodus 1:1. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah; Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin; Dan and Naphtali; Gad and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all. Joseph was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in numbers, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look, he said to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, will join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. Okay, so little bit of background information here. First of all, we have no well, first of all, there's no archaeological evidence of an Israel at this time. None whatsoever. But there is a hypothesis floating around out there. And it's a hypothesis, okay? So if you hear about it, just beware, it is only a hypothesis. Hey, Mr. Shadow Kitty. There is a hypothesis floating around out there that the Hyksos were kind of like the forerunner of the Israelites, kind of. Even though the Israelites were mainly an indigenous movement in Canaan, there is a hypothesis floating around out there that that the Hyksos were kind of like the pre-Israelites. And the Hyksos were in Egypt. But, we don't really have any evidence to say whether or not the Hyksos were like Israel before Israel was formed. We don't have any archaeological evidence that supports that. So, number one, Israel wasn't even formed at this time. Israel doesn't come about until about 1000 BCE. That is about the time that we know for sure we can place there being an Israel in the Levant. So, going on. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. Okay, let's stop right there. Some Christians, not all Christians, but some Christians believe that it was the Israelites that built the pyramids. There are two fundamental flaws in this reasoning. Number one, Israel didn't exist at this time. That's the one fundamental flaw. The other fundamental flaw is that the pyramids were not made with brick and mortar. They were made of stone. And all you have to do to see that they were made of stone is to look closely at them. And they didn't have any mortar in them either. So just want to knock out that from your mind. Verse 15. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Shiphrah and Puah, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, why have you not done this? Why have you let the boys live? The midwives answered Pharaoh, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive. So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people. Every Hebrew boy that is born, you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live. Okay, so again, we have a major problem with this. And that is there would be a major population shift if this ever happened, which, according to the story, is why Pharaoh wanted all the boys drowned, not just because of a huge population shift, but because boys could grow up to be soldiers, whereas women cannot. Remember, this is Egypt, not the Amazon. Okay, chapter 2. Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Verse 5. Before getting into that, I have no idea either, Marianne. But before we get into that, okay, I would like to know, and I don't know, the answer to this question, but I would like to know if a papyrus basket that was coated with tar and pitch could float in the Nile River with a baby in it. That's what I'd like to know. And I don't know that. So if you do know that, go ahead and put it in the comment section. Verse 4, his sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. "This is one of the Hebrew babies," she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" "Yes, go," she answered. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the baby and nursed him. When the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, "I drew him out of the water." Okay, Marianne, thank you. Verse 11. One day, after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day, he went out and saw two Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?" The man said, "Who made you ruler over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must have become known." Or you just didn't look carefully enough, Moses, which this story didn't even take place, but let's just pretend it did. When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. Now, a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. When the girls returned to Reuel, their father, he asked them, "Why have you returned so early today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "And where is he?" Reuel asked his daughters. "Why did you leave him? Invite him to have something to eat." Moses agreed to stay with the man, who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." During that long period, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. Okay, so basically, God's cool with slavery as long as it's not the Israelites. Chapter 3. Now Moses was tending the flocks of Jethro, his father-in-law. I want to read that again. It's chapter 3, verse 1. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. But according to verse 21 of chapter 2, Moses' father-in-law was Reuel. Make up your mind, people. Is it Reuel or is it Jethro? Yeah, tell me about it, Nevermore. But God is never slow to keep his promises. Yeah. Well, guess what? Your God sucks. The God of the Bible sucks. So there's another discrepancy. Jethro versus Reuel. And come on, you just said that Moses married Reuel's daughter. And then you say, but Moses' father-in-law was Jethro. They can't even keep their story straight from one chapter to another. All right, so let's go back. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that the bush was on fire. It did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. Are you kidding me? Moses, it's a fire. Get the hell out of there. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to Moses from within the bush. Moses, Moses. Okay, I want you to see something here too. There's a discrepancy here too. Verse 4 says, God said, Moses, Moses, but verse 2 says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire. Which is it? The angel of the Lord or God? Moving on. And Moses said, here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. Took them long enough. Yeah, you're right about that. Um, let's see. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Okay, I just want to stop here. More than likely, I haven't really read up on this, but more than likely, at this time, it was only the Canaanites that were living in Canaan. Well, along with the Philistines who came from somewhere else, but more than likely it was Canaanites and Philistines. Um, and now the city of the Israelite, and now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. Well, okay, God, if you're like omniscient, shouldn't you have seen it a long time ago? I mean, were you blind all that time? So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Thanks, God. Like, I need a sign right now, and you're going to send me a sign like down the road. Not comforting. Verse 13. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. Now, I've got a question, okay? After God changed Jacob's name to Israel, he pretty much went by the name Israel for the rest of his life. So why is God going back to the name Jacob? Again, did God forget that he changed Jacob's name? This is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. Verse 16. Go, assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We get it, God. You don't have to repeat yourself. Appeared to me and said, I have watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt, and I have promised to bring you up out of your misery in Egypt into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, a land flowing with milk and honey. Verse 18, the elders of Israel will listen to you. Okay, so you can't give Moses a sign right then that, you're going to be with him, but, the elders of Israel are going to listen to you. Okay, God. Then you and the elders are to go to the king of Egypt and say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. I've got another question. I'm sorry, I'm just full of questions. Why are they sacrificing to God? They don't have the law yet. How do they know what to sacrifice if they don't have the law of Moses yet? Am I the only one this doesn't make any sense to? Verse 19. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand compels him. So I will stretch out my hand and strike the Egyptians with all the wonders that I will perform among them. After that, he will let you go. Now, in the KJV, it says God will harden Pharaoh's heart. So, question number, wherever we are at this time, because this is a stupid story, like all the other ones in the Bible, I might add. If Pharaoh would have let them go, but God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, isn't it ultimately God's fault for everything that happens after that? Verse 21. And I will make the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, so that when you leave, you will not leave empty-handed. Every woman is to ask her of her neighbor, and any woman living in her house, for articles of silver and gold, and for clothing, which you will put on your sons and daughters, and so you will plunder the Egyptians. Exactly right, Nevermore. Chapter 4. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? Then the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? God, again, are you blind? The Lord said, throw it on, a staff, he replied. The Lord said, throw it on the ground. Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So obviously, Moses does not know that you should never pick up a snake by its tail, even if it's non-venomous, because it's still going to bite you and it's still going to hurt. But of course, it's a miracle because he doesn't get bitten. So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned into a staff in his hand. This, said the Lord, is so that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Again, we get it, God. You don't have to repeat yourself. Then the Lord said, verse 6, then the Lord said, oh, wait a minute, hang on. Yeah, verse 6. Then the Lord said, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow. Now put it back into your cloak, he said. So Moses put his hand back into his cloak, and when he took it out, it was restored, like the rest of his flesh. Then the Lord said, if they do not believe you or pay attention to the first sign, they may believe the second. Again, God, you're supposed to be all-knowing. Aren't you supposed to know whether or not they're going to believe the first sign? Hey, TV Tube Me. But if, verse 9, but if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, like I said, God, aren't you supposed to know? But if they do not believe these two signs or listen to you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground. The water you take from the river will become blood on the ground. Moses said to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue. The Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? That would be evolution. Who makes them deaf or mute? Again, evolution. Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? No. Verse 12. Now go. I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. But Moses said, pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, what about your brother Aaron, the Levite? Moses is a Levite too. Did you forget that, God? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth, and as if you were God to him. Isn't there only supposed to be one God, and that's supposed to be you who are speaking to Moses? But take the staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it. Verse 18. Then Moses went back up to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, let me return to my own people in Egypt to see if any of them are still alive. Jethro said, go, and I wish you well. Now the Lord had said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey. Wow! Okay, so Moses is going to fit on one donkey, his wife, and sons. It doesn't say how many sons he has, by the way. But the plural of sons would mean he has at least two sons. So that means he'd have to fit 3 people on a donkey. Somehow that math doesn't seem quite right. Hang on, I lost my place. Still looking for my place, folks. Okay, verse 20. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt. And he took the staff of God in his hand. The Lord said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Again, if God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, he is responsible for everything that happens to the Egyptians. Then say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says. Israel is my firstborn son. Not really, but I'm not even going to get in that. And I told you, let my son go so he may worship me. But you refuse to let him go. So I will kill your firstborn son. Again, God's fault. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah, okay, this is part of the story I forgot. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah, remember Zipporah's his wife, took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Gross! Absolutely gross. First of all, why are you removing your son's foreskin? And second of all, it's just gross that you touched Moses' feet with it. Verse, going on. Surely you are bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At that time, she said, bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision. The Lord said to Aaron, and yes, folks, yes, this part of the chapter is very choppy. I'm not skipping any verses. It's very choppy. Verse 27. The Lord said to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. Then Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and also about all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Moses and Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped. That be's idolatry. Not supposed to worship anyone but God. Chapter 5. And this makes no sense at all. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. Like most of the Bible, it doesn't make any sense. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Fair question and fair response. Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Now let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God, or he may strike us with plagues or with the sword." But the king of Egypt said, "Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to your work." Then Pharaoh said, "Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working." That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people: "You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of blocks, or bricks, rather, as before." And God's kind of a blockhead, isn't he? Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, "Let us go and sacrifice to our God." Make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies. Then the slave drivers and the overseers went and said to the people, "This is what Pharaoh says. I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all." So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, "Complete the work required of you for each day, just as when you had straw." And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelite overseers they had appointed, demanding, "Why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before?" Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh. "Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, 'Make bricks.' Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people." Pharaoh said, "Lazy. That's what you are. Lazy. That is why you keep saying, 'Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord.' Now get to work. You will not be given any straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks." The Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, "You are not to reduce the number of bricks required of you each day." When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. Great going, God! Just make Pharaoh mad. Yeah, that'll work. Just make the Pharaoh of Egypt mad. Verse 22. Moses returned to the Lord and said, Why, Lord? Why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all. Gee, Moses, good observation. You deserve a prize. So that is the end of chapter 5. And, like I said, it's kind of a stupid story, especially considering it never happened. The Israelites were not slaves in Egypt. In fact, if the Israelites were ever in Egypt, remember I said the Hyksos may have been pre-Israelites, but we're not sure. We don't have archaeological confirmation. If the Israelites were in Egypt, they were not this big, gigantic number of Israelites. It was just a few here and there. And so anyway, yeah. So God is kind of short-sighted. He's like, oh yeah, Moses, I forgot to tell you. They're going to want to kill you. Your own people are going to want to kill you because I'm hardening Pharaoh's heart. So yeah. Well, God, you could have told me that beforehand so I would have been prepared, I mean, come on. And it's not like you didn't know what Pharaoh's answer was going to be. Or did you? Are you omniscient, God? Are you omniscient or are you not? And then, like I've been saying for the whole story, this is entirely God's fault for hardening the heart of Pharaoh. It's God's fault. Plain and simple. Just like most of the other crap in that book, which mainly never happened, is God's fault. Which, of course, that God doesn't exist, but let's just pretend he does. And yeah. So that's it for today. If you like this kind of content, hit that like button, press the subscribe button. And if you want to know when I come out with new content, hit the bell next to the subscribe button. All social media links are in the description, so check those out. I now have a Teespring store, and you can check out my website that also has some merchandise on it. I also have Patreon now. You can support me on Patreon. I will have Patreon-only content. So, at any rate, go check me out on Patreon. Go to my Teespring store. See if there's anything you want. And yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow for Atheist Church. Bye.